Welcome to the Solve Crimes with Rick and Gavin podcast. We present cold case crimes that we feel can and should be solved with your help. We provide the facts of the case and the research that we have done. Then web sleuths like you help us solve the mystery and provide the victim, family, community, and law enforcement with justice and peace of mind. This is Solve Crimes.
Hey, Rick.
Hey, Gavin. How are you?
Doing all right. The content of today's podcast is pretty heavy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we just finished doing our talking head segments for the YouTube video, and it's definitely, I mean, yeah, there's a heaviness and a somber, vibe going on.
Yeah, so we should let, I guess, listeners know that we're going to be talking today in as much detail as we can, though we're not going to be gory about it and we're going to be respectful about it, but we're going to be talking about the day they found Judith Hakari's body, and we're going to talk about the clues that are there and the things that aren't there. But
Right.
if you're a little squeamish about murder scenes and things like
Why would you be looking
assault,
up true crime
yeah,
podcasts?
you shouldn't be listening.
So and we should also say, like we did in the video, that if you're just now coming to this podcast and hearing about the Judy Hakari case for the first time, highly recommend you go back and listen to our first two podcasts, because they kind of give you the build up to how we got to where we are right now. Because we're going to do very little going back in time. We've already talked about a lot of it.
Yeah. So the day is April 25th, 1970. And I think that we've probably told people April 26th a couple times in the past. And that is a correction that we need to make. It's April 25th. And that is mea culpa, man. I did the math wrong. The
You were going by the newspaper.
Yeah, the news reports all came out on the 27th. And in looking back to see what days of the week things were, I was right when I made our timeline that we've been working off of, but in my mind, I keep saying the 26th. So,
and that is another thing, 25th. Since this is the podcast and we're not worried about doing a bunch of video editing. If people want to know more about this case, and if they're really interested in helping us solve the crime, that is the entire purpose of our channels and our podcast, we highly encourage you to go to our website, which is solvecrimeswithrickandgavin.com. And we have, if you go under the cases link at the top of the page, you'll see Judith Hakari. You click on that, and we've got a really cool timeline, horizontal timeline that gives you all the
crime line.
Pertinent. Yeah, that's right, the crime line. And it gives you all the details and the dates that things happened. It's a really good way to kind of get a synopsis of what happened here. We have links to videos and articles and stuff like that, and
we'll keep adding. Of
course, yeah, that's going to be going on forever.
One of the things that we haven't done yet, we have scans of all of the newspaper articles in which we could find her name, and we will be adding images so that everybody can actually read those articles.
That's on my list tonight when insomnia kicks in.
But
we also set up a forum. It's kind of ugly right now, but it works. And there's a forum inside there. When you get to the Judy Hakari page, there's a button that says, that tells you how to get to the forum. And we inside there, we're going to have discussions from, you and I will be interacting with people as well on there. But we also want to encourage people to go on if they have some insight or they know someone that they might want to suggest that we talk to, or they heard something, and we'll do our best to verify that information for them, because it's all pertinent.
Most of everything that we've covered so far has been information that we have found either on old newsreels or in newspapers. And we all know that try as hard as they may, journalists don't get it right every single time, right? So there are a lot of questions that we have that we believe we know the answer to, but
case
it
in
might
point
not be
is
the answer.
is in the original news articles, they said that Judy, when they found the body, that she had been sexually molested. Now in 1970, she was raped. They didn't say that in 1970, but she was definitely raped in today's terms. That we don't need to be shy about the the level of brutality that was upon her. In fact, that's a good place to start. So we already know that the hikers found her shallow grave. They didn't touch it. They immediately called authorities. When authorities got there, what'd they find, Gavin?
So they found the grave because a portion of her leg, either her knee or her foot or something, had been disturbed by an animal, they believe. And so they dug up the grave, and there was the body of Judith Ann Hakari, and she was stuffed into a canvas bag. We'll get back to the bag here in just a second, but let me just describe for our listeners her condition. The detectives, the officers, described the beating that she had taken as brutal and savage. One of the officers said he had never seen a scene like that before, somebody taken such a huge beating. Her nose was described as being smashed to a pulp. Her jaw was broken in at least 2 places. Teeth were missing. Around her face, she had taken just an incredible beating. The autopsy later also found that she had a fractured hyoid bone. I had to look that up. The hyoid bone kind of controls the tongue and the larynx, right?
Well, it's a way for authorities to determine whether or not somebody's been strangled. That's a
it typically happens. Yeah.
Key item.
So, go ahead.
No, I just in my head just trying to keep everything straight that we're there's a lot. That's the thing about this case. There's so much.
That's the beating, right? That's the beating around her head.
Right.
The next thing going down her body is.
Well, we should probably, before we go into all that, they determined later that their guesstimate was that she had been there roughly 6 weeks.
Correct.
Okay.
6 weeks.
So in that, when I heard that, my first thought.
7 weeks had passed since the time that she had.
Right. So there's a week there that there could possibly be that she was tortured. There was that. There had been that theory at some point in the newspaper that the authorities might set. And I think it's because they saw the brutality and they weren't sure if all of it was done at one time or if she had been kept for several days. So
yeah, at least some of the law enforcement, I guess, officers believed that she had been alive for several days before her death. So. And she was well preserved too. So I believe that she was probably killed on site. And then they got her in that cold ground, in that bag, and that kept her from decomposing too quickly.
Yeah, because we discussed that Weimar is about 2,200 feet in altitude, and during that time of year, it's chilly down, even on under 1,000 feet. So up there, it would definitely preserve. But when I heard that they guessed it was 6 weeks, the first thing that came to my mind was that was right around the time that the landowner that owned the land where she was found came upon those 3 gentlemen with a shovel.
There were 3 gentlemen with a shovel in a car with a sedan, but we'll get into those suspects in a later episode. But
as far as the timeline goes and the condition of the body, that's the first thing I thought of. Not to mention having a nose crushed with a broken jaw, a shovel to the face would do that.
Yeah, and that's something that law enforcement tried to find as they combed the area and they sifted through things. They tried to find a shovel because they believed that might have been the implement that was used to lay down that beating on her. The coroner, the cause of death for Judy Hakari was blunt force trauma and strangulation. It was both of those things.
Right.
Just real quick, going back on Weimar, real quick.
Yeah.
2,200 feet doesn't seem like it to a lot of people would be very cold in April in California, and I just want to kind of talk about that a little bit. Okay. Most people, when you think California, you probably are thinking Southern California, or maybe as far north as Monterey or Santa Cruz or something like that. But Northern California gets cold. Specifically, the Sacramento Valley gets cold because of the geography of the area. And I only know this because of flight school and having to learn meteorology learn meteorology, but I was flying in California for the first 20 years of my private pilot activity. So what happens in the Sacramento Valley is every night it gets very cold. It comes as, we call it the Delta breeze. It's blown off of the San Francisco Bay. It goes up the Sacramento Delta, and then it makes it into the northern part of the Central Valley, and then it starts to hit the Sierra Nevada, where as it raises in altitude, it drops in temperature even more.
Well, because it's also meeting the cold air coming from the mountains, right?
Yeah. So, the rule of thumb is that every 1,000 feet in elevation you go up from the bay, you lose about 2 degrees Celsius in temperature. So it happens real fast.
So the point of all this is that we're saying that those facts absolutely could play a part in preserving the body.
Yeah, plus the Earth just made it through winter. The ground is cold. So we believe that that's the reason that she was preserved pretty well, is very cold ground because of
So going back to how we started this a few minutes ago, where we were talking about what was, she was found in a canvas bag, and describe the bag for me as you've heard it.
So the bag, we don't know exactly the dimensions of the bag. It was big enough to stuff at least part of Judy Hakari's 5'2" frame and 118 pounds. Right. It was reported that it was manufactured somewhere locally in the Sacramento Valley, and that particular bag was used in facilities that had gymnasiums, things like schools.
Well, we can go ahead and say this much. You happen to know or heard that a specific school district was emblazoned on the bag, and
it wasn't.
You don't want to say
it. The bag. I don't want to say it because
we want to verify it before
we want to verify it. But we believe that bag may have just been used by one single school district. But what we know is that it was used by facilities that had locker rooms, like schools, like gyms, like a hospital.
Right. But you had heard that there was a specific school district somewhere on the bag, right? Okay. And
no,
that
not
school...
that it's marked on the bag, just that it was made specifically by that company for that specific school district.
Okay. But and it was a suburb of Sacramento. We'll get into that later if we can verify that.
Yeah, and it would be the school district that Judy Hakari attended school in.
Great.
Yeah.
So probably no reason for her to have that on her person, so it probably came from the killer or killers.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen any reports from anybody saying that in the trunk of her car, for example, there was one of these bags. I feel like that would be there somewhere. Right. Plus, her car wasn't taken with her, and there's no report of it being ransacked. Yeah. To back up just a little bit, there is one other thing that I've been thinking about, Rick. All of the...
Just one.
Oh my goodness, there's so many. But all of the evidence that was in Judy Hakari's car was, other than the keys that were on the floorboard in front, everything else was in the back. The ravels, the remnants of the towels, the buttons, everything was in the back. So,
was it? Okay, I don't remember that part.
So what I've kind of come to believe on that is that the killer may not have he may not have accosted her at the parking lot. He could have been in the car.
Right. Okay.
In the back.
Could have been in the car from the hospital.
Could have been.
And remember, and I know we'll go over suspects in more detail later, but remember there was a bearded young man who had gone to the nurse's station asking for Judy.
Asking if Judith was on duty tonight.
Right.
Now, in fairness, there were 4 Judiths on duty that night, right?
Right,
So,
but
but it's kind of weird, right?
it's certainly, it's certainly something to put a pin in, that's for sure.
So this is a question that we're going to be asking Sacramento County Sheriff's Office is specifically about that bag. Did it go to was it manufactured specifically in Sacramento for a specific school district? Once we know that, then we'll talk about it more.
Right.
I think the next thing we should talk about, Rick, is probably her neck.
Well, the towel,
which was on her neck.
Touche.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was on her neck, but it is an easy connection. It, according to what we've read, it did match the remnants of towel that was found in her car.
That's what we understand. At least
which makes perfect sense.
You know, the reporters and the stories made that connection.
Okay.
So basically what happened was, or what they found was one of Judy Hakari's stockings was wrapped tightly around her neck, like it was the murder weapon. It was used to strangle her.
Right.
Also around her neck, but it sounds to me like it was more on her neck. It was loosely on her neck. Was a strip
was that the description you read?
Yeah, it was loosely there.
Okay.
Was a remnant, like a strip of that cannon ribbed towel.
Okay.
It was reported that law enforcement believed that was used as a gag.
Oh, okay.
But
And now, do I remember when we've talked about this maybe it was episode 1, but I remember you saying that the towel was something that would be used in like a gym or something like that.
Yeah, it was like a commercial style. It wasn't something that you'd buy it, well, in 1970s, you wouldn't go to Macy's to buy that towel. It was like and
the reason why I brought that up is because there's so much to tell here, as far as a story, but we do have to keep in mind that we're trying to solve this crime. And if someone who's listening to this remembers that their uncle, brother, cousin, grandparent,
grandpa,
worked at a school,
maybe or ABC Towel Factory, or
whatever, right? Yeah, I mean, because if we talk about that the sack was used in a school district, and the towels could possibly be from a gym, the locker room at the high school, it might help others make that connection. And that's why we talk about all these details, because it may mean nothing to us, but someone else may go, I remember, and that could blow the whole thing open.
Yes. Yeah. I think the next thing that I would talk about with the condition of the body is probably the sexual assault part. So Judy Hakari was found in her nurse's uniform. On her uniform, there were pins. One had her name on it, like her name badge, and one was a green CSU Sacramento pin. Okay. Which is the school where she got her registered nurse credential or degree. I haven't figured that out either. If she got a bachelor's degree or if she got her credential, or whatever they call that, her certificate.
Right.
But that was there.
I think it's actually a bachelor's in nursing. I think it comes.
Well, it is now.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know that it was in 1970.
Gotcha.
And there still are programs where you can become a registered nurse without getting a bachelor's degree. And at the time, Sac State was not California State University, Sacramento. It was Sacramento State College, I think. Okay. Right? Okay. So it was just a local little college that people went to. Good
and also
school,
going by that, all of those things made identifying her fairly easy. Yeah.
What I'm not sure of, Rick, is I don't know where her coat went. Nobody's ever mentioned that. In all of the stuff that's missing, I have never heard it mentioned in all the stuff that was there. I've never heard it mentioned, but
And that is a huge thing about this episode is what we were talking about, what is there, what was found. And we're hoping that, and more importantly, what wasn't found may help us solve this case.
I really hope that whoever did this took a trophy. I just hope.
Well, we talked about her purse has never been found, so that is somewhere. Her watch. Could be landfill, it could be, and there's the watch. It was a Timex.
It was a silver Timex nurse's duty watch.
And describe the purse again.
So the purse was described as a black leather green purse. Okay. That's all I've got. But it would have personal items in there. Right.
It would have her driver's license, which I key in on because I've heard that before as a trophy that's taken because it's small and it can be hidden fairly
small.
Easily. Yeah. So and that's the thing that may break this open, and just getting this out there. That's why we encourage everybody to share and like and all that kind of stuff to get the word out, because it may be something that because this is 50 years ago, so whoever did this was probably minimum 70 years old by now, or roughly in that area, so or older. So so if someone's clearing out grandpa's storage unit or stuff from his house, and they come across a driver's license with a strange lady on it with the last name of Hakari, that may trigger stuff. I mean, because we want to solve this case, but we're also not so innocent or ignorant enough to think that the odds of the person being alive they go down after 50 years. So, but it would still help law enforcement and communities heal, and solving a case like that can help law enforcement look at other cases and see if they can put the puzzle pieces together. And that does help law enforcement and the communities. It absolutely helps.
Yeah. So getting back to her body, her nurse's uniform was open. It was like open.
Right.
Her bra was in the grave with her. It was on her, but it was torn in two.
Okay.
Her underwear or panties.
So was it torn or was it cut?
So
is that unclear?
I think I've read that it was torn.
Okay.
But I don't know. Now that you think about it, I don't know. We'll have to look at that and ask that question in Sacramento County, or maybe Placer County. They might be able to share that with us. Her panties were in the grave underneath her. They were not on her.
Okay.
They talked about having some detectives come in to do a toxicology exam. And anyway, the reports at the time were that she was sexually molested, that she then became sexually assaulted, and then the headlines started to look like sex murder, clues, stuff like that. So, in today's parlance, because we're a little more to the point in 2020 than they were in 1970, Judy Hakari was raped. I'm nearly certain of it, and
well, they called that out almost immediately, so there must have been some reasons for that.
Yeah, there are other speculations out on the internet that say that didn't happen, but I don't.
Considering there was no usable DNA collected at the crime scene, it's really a moot point to some degree. I mean, it's
other than understanding how sick the perpetrator is, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I hate thinking about stuff like this, man. It just kills me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's essentially, she endured anything bad that can happen in that situation. She kind of got it all. And
got it all.
Yep. And that is why, like I said, that's why it's so important to solve this case, even if it's 50 years later. It doesn't make it less important, like we've said many times. So I still go back to how her parents had to read that and hear about that.
man.
You know, because I don't know about you, but I, you know, finding that out after the fact, you immediately go to, my daughter needed me and I wasn't there. Even the greatest guys, you're gonna think that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you and I both have had the experience of like our daughters around Judy Hakari's age going off to college, right? And and like in the case of our daughter, she was in a safe place, you know. But freaking, so was Judy Hakari.
Yes. Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah, her apartment complex was. I mean, you know,
it wasn't
again,
the best part of town.
Yeah, but it was not. You know, it's not.
The worst.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It was not the worst by any stretch. You know, it was. Yeah.
A lot of good shopping going on right around there, and movie theaters in the 70s, and you know, it was hustle and bustle. Was right next to two of the nicest, swankiest neighborhoods in all of Sacramento to this day.
Yeah, and a couple was like, I mean, I haven't done the measurement on it, but it was maybe 1.5 miles from the Arden Fair Mall.
Yeah, and from like Arden Park, which is just a swanky neighborhood, probably 3 miles less.
I mean, the bottom line is there is, you know, I mean, anything outside of being behind security gates with guards, you know, nowhere is 100% safe. If someone wants to do this specifically to you, they're going to figure it out. And if it's someone who wants to do that to someone and they're an opportunist, they'll hide in the shadows until I mean, you know, the cases that I've read, I mean, it's because I'm interested in the psychology of it all. The cases that I've read, there are people who they have that urge, and sometimes they go out and scout for hours and end up going home, you know, and so they're opportunists. They're looking for the situation that fits in their brain, that they're looking for their optimal situation. So it could very easily be that.
Yeah. There's one thing that we haven't mentioned that was there, and that was her engagement ring was still on her hand.
And that's what's so, I don't know, that's kind of a bizarre one to me.
They
take her watch, but they leave the ring.
Yeah, the watch wasn't there, purse wasn't there, but her ring was there. Like, if you're going to take a trophy, an engagement ring would be I probably just as easily concealed as a driver's license. And you know what? It was just a couple of days ago that I found out what kind of ring it was.
Oh, tell that story. It just makes this all the more bizarre.
Well, and I think on this podcast I've mentioned a couple times, at least in different posts, Judy Hakari reminds me of my mom so much. Right. You know, she was a little bit older than my mom, but just a couple years.
And then you found out they were 12th cousins.
Yeah, then they're related. Well, yeah. So, okay, so
you heard about the description of the ring.
The description of the ring. Now, this was a popular kind of style in the late 1960s, early 1970s. They antiqued, quote unquote, the gold, and they did that using black paint, right? So, in the ring there would be reliefs, you know, etches in there, and then they would paint it, and then they would rub it off on the high spots, and it would stay in the low spots. Right. So, that was pretty popular for the time. My mom has an antiqued ring, but then I found out that it was described as an antiqued gold rose with a diamond in the blossom. That's freaking my mom's engagement ring.
Wow.
There's
so many moments in this case where it gives you chills for all kinds of different reasons, and you know it. And personalizes it.
Now it was a popular style at the time. There were thousands of young women that have that ring.
But it's still a little freaky.
Yeah. When I read that, I mean, I don't want to get too personal because it's my mother, but it's known. Anybody who has seen her ring knows that it is an antiqued gold rose with a diamond in the blossom. Wow. But that's going back to the case, it's like that's so curious why
that wouldn't have been taken.
Yeah, and that is the item that was brought back to show Bill and Evelyn Hakari to say, we found your daughter. They recognize the ring. It's a very recognizable style.
Yeah.
It's not
that
just
is a
marquee.
talk about an exclamation mark.
Oh man.
We talked about it in the YouTube video that we're going to put up soon. The emotions, when he was told, he said 2 words to the officer, and that was "thank you." And when I read that, there's so many layers to those 2 words. It must have been, and I know it sounds weird, but it must have been a relief to just know, right? Either way, and then.
Well, they would have suspected it. They had hoped.
Of course, it was in the back of their mind. But it also ended the wondering.
Yeah.
Right, which is another.
And that would bring some relief. I think
absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
yeah. And but I was just thinking of 2 little words, but there was a lot behind it.
Yeah.
So that was So I think, to recap, and we're going to be putting a lot of this stuff, as much detail as we can, and we're going to try and get corroboration on the descriptions of things to make sure that we're putting up the correct stuff. But we're going to have an area on the Judy Hakari page on our website that will feature the items that we know were never recovered, and as best descriptions as we can give. That way, because at this point, without DNA evidence to compare to anyone, and as far as I know, no fingerprints, we're looking at it's going to be something that we can tie a person to that murder
with a thing,
with a thing. That's right. Something identifiable. Right.
I'm really hoping that somebody will be going through Grandpa's old things and see a driver's license of Judith and Hakari.
Me too. Yep. Or a storage unit. Yeah.
I mean, I think that law enforcement has a lot more on this case than we know. You and I watched an old Channel 13 newsreel where one of the news reporters had asked, "Is this your best lead?" And he said, "It's a good lead. We have lots of leads."
Right, and this is so that people know that this is a newsreel that was about this case.
Yeah, yeah. So,
I mean, I can't imagine, how little they had to go on for this case. Today, if this had happened, number one, there'd probably be GPS. They could track her cell phone. They can look at security footage from the parking lot. They could look at, traffic cameras at all different points exiting the city or in and around her. I mean, there's so many things that they have that are so useful in finding someone and a lead. But back then, very little.
Yeah, it actually becomes all that much more impressive that cases like these are solved at all.
Right.
I mean, it was hard work.
Yeah.
And I've heard commentary from other, podcasts and other things that I've seen online that really kind of take the police to task on this. There are a couple things that I think were kind of sketchy as far as the police side of things, but overall, I think they did the best they could. The one thing that I would say is Sheriff John Misterly said about a week after the fact that, it's possible that she could have just walked away. He said, she becomes depressed sometimes.
This is prior to her bodies being discovered, though, right?
Yes, yeah. But they had all that evidence of a struggle, and that's where people kind of take him to task.
Right.
And I think we have to remember, first of all, the time, and the sheriff is an elected position.
Right.
He's a politician. He's not really anything more than that.
That is correct.
And John Misterly had a reputation of being a real character of a small town sheriff.
In that vein, and I think what you're getting at is that the scorecard when you go to be reelected, having one less unsolved murder helps
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
So, and it's, I mean, no disrespect at all to law enforcement, but a 50-year-old case, the odds of making it to the point where you can solve it is, especially with the lack of evidence that we're talking about, is tough. So I don't, I mean, they've got plenty of, I mean, the people who handle cold cases that are active duty, I'm not talking about like, there are some cold case divisions that are led by retired detectives. That's different. But the ones that are led, and I believe this one is here in Sacramento, is led by active working detectives that work on new cases, and they're overloaded. That's the bottom line. They're overloaded.
And looking back at 1970, they were too. If after a week they had chased down every single lead that they could chase down, and it turned to nothing, what is their choice? They kind of have to wait until another lead comes in, right?
And that is, and so I just want to make it clear that we're not second guessing law enforcement. What we're doing is we totally understand the situation, and I mean, no one would expect anybody to be on this full-time, part-time, half part-time, you know what I mean? So what we're trying to do is, we know that there have been other cases that have been solved with little to no evidence. We're just trying to bring things back up, and try to bring it into the spotlight so that, again, if somebody sees one of these videos, and even a year or two from now comes across that driver's license, they'll make that connection. And that's what we're trying to do here.
Or, one of the things that really sucked about this case, Rick, I think we've shared this before, but this was literally the first case that we looked at when we considered doing this series. We were on the phone or on Skype or something like that. You're like, hey, I'm just going to go to Sac Sheriff. Yeah, they have a cold case thing. Look at this. And I was
the first
just
time you and I both heard that name.
Yeah, that was the very first time. And when we searched it, what did we find? Almost nothing. Nothing.
We found, we didn't find almost nothing. We found a lot of reference to her.
But
right?
No information.
But in connection with other murders.
Yes.
Not like a focus on Judy.
Yeah, it was just in passing.
And we'll, as we go on here, we'll go into the other related cases. Carol Hilburn and
Nancy Benalik.
Nancy Benalik, and possibly Donna Lass. Yeah, we'll go into all that. But we really felt that that Judy deserved the I don't know what the right word is there. It's not spotlight, but she definitely deserved to have.
She deserves the attention.
The case definitely does deserve the attention, and I guess it's her story that deserves attention, right?
Yeah.
Just out of it's bittersweet, but it's a very interesting thing, and we've talked about this. We've gone back and forth as far as when we first took on this case that it is, we're not trying to sensationalize it for our own benefit necessarily. It is, we know, and we'll do another episode on this. We know that the cases that draw people in, that make it personal and gets people, feeling something about it, and those are the ones that don't just die right away. And so that is what we're trying to do here is we do want to add a little bit of drama and that kind of thing, and kind of pull you in and get to know Judy, because then it means something to you.
And that's part of our strategy. The other part of our strategy is trying to create a space on the internet so that when you go and you search Judith and Hakari, you find the information.
The page that we have up right now isn't even done with all the information we have, and that's more informative than anything we found on the internet. There's no timeline. There's no collection of photos. There's no collection of articles. There's no videos. There's no nothing. So we're
putting them
at the very least, we're, even if it's 5 years from now, at the very least, we accomplished that.
If somebody searches for Judith and Hakari,
yes,
we want them to be able to find it. That's part of the strategy that we hope that we're bringing to this.
Minimal. The ultimate goal is to solve the case, but we're doing everything we can on all fronts.
Yeah, we're going to talk. You kind of touched on that, but one of the reasons that Joseph D'Angelo was caught was because a web sleuth who
Yes.
devoted much of her life to the victims of that guy, decided to change what they called him from the Visalia ransacker to the East Area rapist to the original Night Stalker. She made it the Golden State Killer, and she connected those together.
Here's what she did. She rebranded him.
That's right.
And it put a shot of energy into that case. Also with, she had done she had written a big expose in the Los Angeles Magazine, which went viral.
Mm-hmm. So. Well, one of the sad things about this is that, so I was raised in the Sacramento Valley, in a rural suburb of Sacramento. You spent, how many years have you lived in the Sacramento area? Forever, right? Because you are old, Trace. Well, no, but we've both spent many decades in Sacramento, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'd never heard of this.
Right.
And anytime that I have shared it with anybody, and this is anecdotal, but I mean, you can look at my Facebook feed when I share what we're doing. Other people who I went to school with from like 4th grade all the way through graduating from college, I had no idea about this.
Right.
And that's a real problem.
Yeah. So we'll get into more of that stuff. I mean, I think we've covered what was found and not found in the grave, starting with April 25th and beyond, and that's really what we were trying to cover in this episode. And the upcoming episodes, as we've hinted at, are the suspect episode is going to be a pretty big one, because there's more than you could imagine, and there are a couple that we actually have thought of that other people haven't, and areas to explore that we're not even sure were explored then. So there's a lot to talk about and unpack there with regards to suspects, and so that's coming up.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Gavin. I appreciate it.
All right, Rick.
And everybody, if you're still listening, make sure that you check out our website and the companion YouTube channel. They go hand in hand. So if you're interested in this case, definitely take the time to watch the YouTube videos. They're obviously more visual, so we have photos and things of that nature on there, and articles. And this is the more long form version of those episodes. Great. All right, Gavin. Till next time.
Yeah. Till the next time we talk, it's probably going to be in like 20 minutes when we find something else out. Right?
Exactly.
All right. See you, Trace.
All right. See ya. Thanks for listening to the Solve Crimes with Rick and Gavin podcast. Please subscribe to stay up to date with the cases we feature. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Solve Crimes with Rick and Gavin, for more details and visuals that we can't provide here. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. If you have information on this or any of the cases that we feature, or if you'd like to join the discussion in our case forums, please visit solvecrimeswithrickandgavin.com. We have a page featuring this case that features an exclusive Solve Crimes crime line that shows the details of the case from the beginning through today.